I'm here with David Dempster, storyteller. And David, do you have another story you want to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. This one is called The Interview, and it's about 5 or 10 minutes long. So here is The Interview. He watched the young woman coming towards him, wending her way through the rose garden. She gave a big smile and put out her hand. Guten Tag, Herr Becker. So good to meet you at last. Guten Tag, Fräulein. I hope you will not feel that you've wasted your time spending it with an old man like myself. The reporter smiled again. Actually, you're quite a catch. You've become something of a national institution again, now that you're one of the oldest people in the world. Well, please take a seat and tell me what I can do for you. She pulled a seat close to the old man's wheelchair. As I think you know, I'm doing an article about the war. I realise that's rather a worn-out topic by now, but I feel I have a rather interesting angle on it, and I'd like to explore it with you. Is it agreeable with you if I make a tape recording? I prefer if you just take notes. She already had her tape recorder half out of her bag. She froze for a moment, realised her presumptuousness, and quickly replaced it and took out her notepad. The young woman recovered her poise and dived right in with her main theme. Herr Becker, you were an eminent figure in Hitler's army. History has condemned Hitler as an evil man. This makes young people wonder if Germans serving under Hitler felt any sense of conflict. Did you ever feel it was wrong to support him? He gave himself a moment's pause. Fräulein, your question is simple, and so I feel at liberty to give a simple answer. My answer is that at the time I was doing my duty for my country, something men have been doing for millennia. We were not thinking of good and evil. I was and am a simple man, and performed the role dealt me by destiny. I choose to leave it at that for now. But did you consider yourself a Nazi and support its aims and ideals? He paused another moment. Do you believe in reincarnation? I don't really know. Well, Fräulein, you must have thought about it. Do you believe you've lived before and that you will live another life after this one? I don't really see... Look, it's very simple. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. Let's say you go to the shop on your bicycle. You get on the bike, you make the journey, and when you arrive, you get off your bike. Do you think you can do another bicycle journey? Of course you can. Since you did it once, you can do it again. So, you're born as a baby, you live your life, then you get old and die. Do you think you can do it again? Of course. You did it once, you could do it again. If you want to, that is. See? I suppose so, but it does make sense. So, you think of yourself as a young woman living in the year 2009. But you've lived before. You were probably a German before, don't you think? So how about you? Were you a Nazi during the war? The young woman sat in perplexed silence. Listen, he said more gently, I'm being hard on you. Why don't we agree that I won't lecture you with any more philosophy, and you won't ask me any more questions about my thoughts and views? If you want stories about events, that's fine. I'll talk till I bore the pants off you. She shrugged. Okay, fine. This was not going at all how she had planned it. She was glad her colleagues and editor were not here to see her performance. The conversation got onto easier subjects. She asked him about how he was promoted so quickly after the start of the war, and he gave her as much of the story as he cared to. Then she asked him about his one and only meeting with the Führer and his decoration. He was ready for her, dipping his hand into his mementos box and producing the iron cross with oak leaves hanging from its red, white and black ribbon. He described the amusing part of the incident. I had practiced giving my best straight-arm salute so I would make a good impression. When I stopped in front of the man, I shot my arm out so fast that my cap fell off. I had to scramble to pick it up, and then neither of us was sure whether to repeat the salute. I gave a half-hearted one, and then just as I took my arm down, his arm shot up. I actually believe I saw him smile a little at this comedy, and I sometimes wonder if that makes me the only person in history who ever saw the man smile. Fräulein Dietrich enjoyed the story and took a moment to catch up with her notes. There were stories of a spy in your company, someone spying for the British. Is there anything you can tell me about that?" He snorted. "Well, if we had a spy, he did a damn good job of keeping himself under cover. I only heard that rumour many years after the war, and by then everyone was crazy about James Bond and spies were in fashion. The truth of army life is pretty mundane compared with all that." "But there must have been something to it. How come the stories specifically connected the spy with your operation?" "Well, a good bloodhound like you will no doubt find out all about it. And when you do, please come and share it with me. Just don't wait too long though, eh?" She went on to ask him about the final days of the war and his eventual encounter with the Allied armies. Sure enough, as he rambled on, she found herself getting a little bored, just as he had predicted. She was glad she'd picked up the humorous incident with the Führer. That would go down well and lighten the tone of her piece. The sun's shadows were lengthening as the reporter took her leave. He took pleasure in watching the swing of her hips as she picked her way back between the rose beds and made for the exit. She gave a little wave without turning round, confident his eyes would still be on her. The old man sat lost in his memories. Pretty soon there he was again, standing on the dark, wind-swept beach, waiting to be whisked off to England. The submarine crossing, the intense debriefing in Dover, the vital information that turned the tide of the Battle of Britain, allowing England to redirect its last few aircraft to meet Hitler's final onslaught. Then back in his barracks the next day, pretending he'd been to visit his girlfriend for the weekend. The old man looked around to make sure he was alone before digging deeper into his mementos box for his prized possession. Then, several years after that first escapade, the second dramatic incident in his otherwise humdrum life. Once again, he found himself in a position to change the course of history. Another submarine crossing, this time followed by a flight to London. Intense debriefing, giving key details of the disposition of German forces prepared to meet the Allied invasion. Then, just as he was readying himself for the return trip, the unexpected summons. They swore him to keep the secret for life, and then led him to the basement meeting room. Out from his mementos box came the British George Cross, and with it the memory of the man who had pinned it on his chest. He could still see the burnished leather seats around the long oak table. He could sense the stiffening of his back as the man entered the room. He could smell the cigar and see the glistening in the man's eyes as Hans Becker received the most precious award of all, the intense gratitude on the face of the greatest leader the world has ever known.